Refill my coffee, sweetheart, and try to look happy about it. The man at table 6 sneered. He thought she was just a waitress. He didn't know she was the only reason his file was on its way to a killer capture list. The Anchor Grill hummed with the quiet rhythm of a late weekday morning. It was a place caught between worlds, nestled just 3 blocks from the main gates of Naval Base San Diego. The air inside was a comforting mix of fresh brewed coffee, sizzling bacon, and the faint, briny scent of the nearby sea that clung to the uniforms of its patrons. On the walls, faded nautical charts and black and white photos of warships from a bygone era told a silent story of service. Behind the counter, Chloe Hayes moved with an economy of motion that most mistook for simple, practiced efficiency. At 30, with a cascade of reddish-brown hair pulled into a loose bun and a few stray strands framing a face of calm composure, she was the picture of a quintessential friendly waitress. Her gray-blue eyes, placid as a lake at dawn, seemed to miss nothing, yet revealed little. To the regulars, she was just Chloe, the girl who remembered you like your hash browns crispy and your coffee black. One of those regulars was Mrs. Gable, a Navy widow with a kind smile and a standing order for lemon meringue pie every Wednesday. "You're such a dear, Chloe," she said, patting Chloe's hand as she set down the plate. "I keep telling my son, he needs to find a steady, normal girl just like you." Chloe offered the warm, practiced smile that was the universal currency of the service industry. Normal. The word echoed in her mind, a hollow little sound. If Mrs. Gable only knew how far from normal her life had been, how the quiet predictability of this diner was a carefully constructed fortress against a past that refused to stay buried. This fortress, the Anchor Grill, was her chosen sanctuary. Its proximity to the base allowed her to exist on the periphery of a world she once commanded from the shadows. She could observe, listen, and keep the razor's edge of her situational awareness honed. A skill set she couldn't bring herself to abandon. She knew the ranks, the deployment schedules, and the quiet anxieties of the men and women who came here for a brief respite from the rigid structure of military life. It wasn't intelligence gathering anymore. It was habit, a habit that had kept her alive in places that didn't appear on any map. Then there was Table 6. Marcus Thorne, a defense contractor with a tailored suit that couldn't conceal his oily demeanor, had been a regular for the past few months. He treated the staff with a casual disdain, his voice a slick veneer of superiority. Today, as Chloe approached with a coffee pot, he looked up from his phone, his eyes raking over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "Well, hello there, sweetheart," he purred. "Besides this excellent coffee, is there anything else sweet on the menu today?" Chloe's smile didn't waver, but inside, a switch flipped. It was the kind of microaggression she dealt with daily, but from Thorne, it felt different. It felt like a probe, a test. Her training, long dormant, whispered a warning. She simply tilted the pot. "Just the coffee, sir," she replied, her voice even and cool. But the calm was deceptive. A storm was gathering, and Table 6 was its epicenter. The low drone of conversation in the Anchor Grill continued, oblivious to the silent, high-stakes assessment happening at Table 6. Chloe moved away, her senses on high alert. Thorne wasn't just arrogant. He was agitated. His gaze kept darting towards the door, his fingers drumming an erratic rhythm on the tabletop. He was waiting for something or someone, and his nervous energy was a discordant note in the diner's placid symphony. Chloe was wiping down the counter when the bell above the door chimed. A man stepped inside, and the atmosphere shifted. He wasn't large in the way a bodybuilder was, but lean and dense with a coiled power like a spring under tension. He moved with a predator's silence, his presence commanding attention without demanding it. A faint, pale scar cut across his left temple, a subtle mark of a violent history. His eyes, the color of a stormy sea, swept the room in a single, comprehensive glance. They were the eyes of a hunter. He was Commander Liam O'Connell, known in certain circles only by his call sign, Rook. His gaze passed over the sailors, the civilians, and then it landed on Chloe. For a fraction of a second, his expression tightened with surprise, a flicker of disbelief. He had last seen those gray-blue eyes across a grainy satellite feed, her calm voice guiding his team out of a kill box in the North African desert. He thought she was a ghost, a legend filed away in a classified report. Seeing her here, in a waitress uniform with an order pad in her hand, was like finding a Valkyrie working in a library. Ignoring the "please wait to be seated" sign, Rook moved directly toward table 6. He didn't look at Chloe again, but she knew he was aware of her every breath. He leaned over Marcus Thorne, his body language casual, almost friendly, to any outside observer. "Mr. Thorne," Rook said, his voice a low murmur that barely carried. "We need to have a word." Thorne's face paled. I don't know you." Rook's gaze flickered to Chloe for a nanosecond, and he spoke 2 words, so quiet they were almost lost in the clatter of cutlery. "Condition, pale horse." The world stopped. For Chloe, the name wasn't a code, it was a ghost story. Pale horse. The designation for an imminent, high-level threat actively preparing to engage in a civilian zone. A threat she herself had identified and flagged months ago. Thorne's right hand was already moving, dipping inside his suit jacket. Time dilated. The clinking of Mrs. Gable's fork against her plate seemed to stretch into an eternity. Chloe saw it all with devastating clarity. Thorne's position near the main exit, the bulge under his jacket, the line of fire that covered half the diner. The cheerful waitress vanished. In her place stood an operative. The crisp sound of Chloe setting the glass coffee pot on the counter was the only punctuation in the sudden silence. Her center of gravity dropped, her core muscles tightening like a steel cable. Her fingertips found the underside of the heavy, solid oak tabletop. The next second was a blur of control violence. Like a trebuchet releasing its payload, she launched the table upwards. It was a shield and a weapon. The heavy would slammed into Marcus Thorne's chest and jaw, driving him backward with brutal force. The air exploded with the shriek of shattering porcelain and Thorne's choked gasp of pain and surprise. His partially drawn pistol flew from his grasp, skittering across the linoleum floor like a dead thing. The entire diner froze, a tableau of shock and disbelief. Before the overturned table had even settled, Rook was in motion, his foot stomping down on the discarded weapon as he moved to pin the dazed Thorne against the booth. Chloe stood over the chaos, her stance balanced, her breathing even. The girl who served coffee was gone. In her place was the woman who had answered the call of the pale horse. The aftermath of the explosion of violence was a deafening silence, broken only by Thorne's pained groans from beneath the wreckage of his table. Patrons stared, their minds struggling to reconcile the gentle waitress from moments ago with the ruthlessly efficient operative who now stood poised and ready. Sal, the diner's owner, a grizzled former Marine gunnery sergeant, had already emerged from the kitchen, a phone in hand, his expression grim but unsurprised. He wasn't calling 911. He was calling the base. Within 10 minutes, the flashing lights of an NCIS vehicle painted the diner's windows in strobing blues and reds. 2 agents entered, their movements sharp and professional, clearing the room with quiet authority. Leading them was a woman with severe, dark hair pulled back in a tight bun and an intense, analytical gaze that seemed to peel back layers of reality. This was Special Agent Eva Rostova. Her eyes swept the scene. The overturned table, the secured weapon, Rook standing over the subdued Thorne, and finally they settled on Chloe. Rostova's focus was immediate and absolute. She saw past the apron and the order pad. "Commander O'Connell," Rostova acknowledged with a curt nod. "Your report said the suspect was neutralized by restaurant staff. That seems understated." The waitress identified a threat and responded appropriately. Rook stated, his voice a carefully neutral wall. But Rostova was already walking toward Chloe, her expression a mixture of skepticism and intrigue. "Ma'am, I need you to walk me through what you observed." Chloe's response was automatic, the language of her former life spilling out. Subject displayed elevated anxiety and counter-surveillance behavior. His positioning, weapon accessibility, and imminent action suggested an immediate threat to civilian personnel. The technical precision of her words hung in the air. Rostova's eyebrows shot up. This wasn't a waitress describing a scary moment. This was an intelligence professional delivering a threat assessment. And what in your background, Rostova pressed, her voice sharp, enables you to make such an assessment? Before Chloe could formulate a sanitized answer, Rook stepped in. Agent Rostova, I believe this part of the conversation requires a more secure environment. The implication was a blast door slamming shut. 30 minutes later, Chloe sat in a sterile, windowless conference room on the naval base. The air buzzed with the hum of secure electronics. Across the table, Rostova held a tablet, her fingers swiping through a file that Chloe knew contained her ghost-like existence. Agent Chloe Hayes, Rostova said, the name feeling like a suit she hadn't worn in years. Your file is heavily redacted, but it mentions Operation Sandstone, embedded human intelligence support for SEAL Team 7 in North Africa. Rook, standing by the wall, confirmed it. Agent Hayes provided the intel that kept my team from walking into a multi-stage ambush. Her analysis of local informant networks identified a compromise that would have wiped us out. The success of Operation Sandstone had been her crowning achievement and her downfall. She had built a network of assets from nothing, only to see it dismantled by a security breach that originated thousands of miles away, within their own systems. The leak wasn't her fault, but the consequences were hers to bear. Standard protocol is extraction and reassignment, Rostova stated, her eyes boring into Chloe. But your record shows voluntary separation from active duty. Your psych evaluation suggests avoidance isn't in your behavioral profile. So tell me, Agent Hayes, what exactly were you running from? The question was a scalpel, cutting through the scar tissue. Chloe's composure finally cracked, just a little. Her voice was low, heavy with the ghosts of the past. You don't run from the faces of the people who trusted you, she said, her gray-blue eyes meeting Rostova's. The people who died because our secure channels weren't secure. I wasn't running. I was standing still. I needed the noise to stop. The room fell silent. Rostova looked from the file to the woman in front of her. The waitress from the Anchor Grill was gone, replaced by a highly trained, deeply wounded operative who had just been dragged back into the world she had tried so desperately to escape. Word of the waitress who flipped a table on a wanted fugitive spread through the naval base like wildfire. It became an instant legend, whispered in barracks and briefing rooms, embellished with each telling. The Anchor Grill was no longer just a diner. It was a landmark. The clientele shifted. While civilians still came for Sal's famous burgers, the diner became an unofficial hub for military personnel. They came in groups and alone, their visits carrying a new weight. They didn't stare or point. Instead, they treated Chloe with a quiet, profound respect usually reserved for a commanding officer or a decorated veteran. The sweethearts and dears vanished from their vocabulary, replaced by a respectful ma'am. One afternoon, a week after the incident, Commander O'Connell came in with his team. They took a booth in the back, ordered a round of coffees, and spoke in low tones. When they left, Chloe went to clear their table. Sitting in the center, placed deliberately on a folded napkin, was a small, hand-carved wooden token, no bigger than a quarter. On it was etched the stark, unmistakable image of a skeletal figure on horseback. A pale horse. Chloe picked it up, the smooth, dark wood warm against her fingers. It wasn't a medal or a formal commendation. It was something more. It was a sign of inclusion, a quiet acknowledgement from one warrior to another. Sal, the diner's owner, saw her holding it. The former gunny, a man of few words and even fewer smiles, walked over. He took the token from her gently and placed it in a small, empty spot on the shelf behind the cash register, right next to a folded American flag from his own service. He said nothing, but his actions spoke volumes. It was now part of the diner's honor roll. The token became an object of quiet curiosity. One day, a young, fresh-faced sailor, barely out of boot camp, asked Sal what it was. Sal continued polishing a glass, not even looking up. "Son," he grumbled, his voice like gravel. "It means you're safe in here, and it means you show some damn respect to the lady pouring your coffee." The legend of Chloe Hayes grew not in loud stories, but in these quiet moments of deference. Chief Rodriguez, a longtime regular, stopped her during his lunch. "Ma'am," he began, looking her straight in the eye. "I don't know your story, and I don't need to. But you should know, people respect what you did. You're one of us." The most significant change, however, was within Chloe herself. The hypervigilance she had worked so hard to suppress could now be released. She no longer had to pretend she didn't notice the man in the corner who had been watching the base entrance for 20 minutes, or the odd bulge in the jacket of a new customer. She could simply be who she was, a guardian hiding in plain sight. The apron was still her uniform, but the anchor grill had become her new watchtower. The quiet acceptance of her past didn't mean Chloe was content to simply be a living legend. The instincts that had been reawakened by the confrontation with Thorne refused to go dormant again. Her mind, once a finely tuned instrument for threat analysis, was back online. The diner was no longer just a sanctuary. It was a listening post. 2 weeks after the incident, a new contractor started frequenting the grill. He was quiet, unlike Thorne, but his patterns were all wrong. He paid in cash, his eyes constantly scanned the room, and he took calls on a secondary phone he tried to conceal. To anyone else, he was just another customer. To Chloe, he was a flashing red light. One evening, after her shift, she walked a few blocks away from the diner. From her bag, she pulled a cheap, disposable burner phone. She dialed a number from memory. It rang twice before Agent Rostova's clipped, professional voice answered. "Yes." "The Anchor Grill," Chloe said, her voice low and disguised. "New customer. Name's Erickson. Logistics contractor. Watch his financials and his burner phone." There was a pause on the other end. "Who is this?" Rostova asked, though Chloe suspected she already knew. "Just a concerned citizen," Chloe replied, and ended the call, dropping the phone into a storm drain. She hadn't been asked. She hadn't been assigned. She had simply acted. It was a duty that transcended employment. The official world reached out as well, but not in the way she expected. There was no formal letter from the Department of Defense. Instead, a week later, a secure, encrypted email landed in a dormant account she hadn't accessed in over a year. It was from Rook. The subject line was blank. The body of the message was short. "Chloe, Rostova's team sends their regards. Erickson is now on a watch list. Seems your eyes are as sharp as ever. They want you back. They'll offer you a desk, a title, a pension. But I know you didn't leave because you were tired of the work. The rules of the sandbox are the same here. Protect the people on your left and right. We still need eyes like yours on the ground, not behind a computer screen. No matter what you choose, know that you have a place. Stay safe. Rook." Chloe read the email 3 times. He understood. It wasn't about returning to the field or pushing papers. It was about finding a way to continue the mission on her own terms. The letter she had once dreaded, the official recall to duty, was irrelevant. Rook's message was the only validation she needed. She closed the laptop. Her decision was made. She wasn't going back to the shadows of Operation Sandstone, nor was she going to remain just a waitress. She had found a third path. She would be a guardian, unseen and unacknowledged, serving her country 1 cup of coffee at a time. Her duty hadn't ended. It had just changed its uniform. My call sign is dormant, but the operator is always online. 18 months ago, I walked away from a world of classified briefings and covert operations, seeking silence. I thought peace was found in anonymity, in the simple, repetitive tasks of a normal life. But the confrontation with Thorne, the whisper of Pale Horse, taught me a fundamental truth. You can't unlearn who you are. The reflex to protect is etched into your soul. Now, my mornings at the Anchor Grill begin the same way they always have. The aroma of coffee brewing, the neat stacks of menus, the specials written on the chalkboard. But the purpose behind these routines has been reforged. This isn't a hiding place anymore. It's my post. The line between Chloe Hayes, the waitress, and the agent I used to be has blurred into a single, authentic identity. I can serve coffee with genuine care for the person receiving it, while my peripheral vision tracks every entrance and exit. I can engage in casual conversation about the weather with Mrs. Gable, while noting the unusual vehicle that has passed by twice in the last 10 minutes. My customers are no longer just patrons. They're the people I am sworn to protect. The young sailors, full of bravado and homesickness, are the future of the Navy. The seasoned officers, weighed down by command, are the backbone of its present. They trust me with their orders and their casual confessions, and in return, I offer them a space where they can lower their guard because mine is always up. Agent Rostova's visits have become a quiet, informal part of my routine. She comes for coffee, and we talk about nothing important, but sometimes a name I mention or an observation I share fills a missing piece in one of her puzzles. It's an arrangement that exists in the gray space between official and unofficial, a partnership built on mutual respect. The wooden pale horse token still sits by the cash register. It's a constant reminder that recognition doesn't always come with a metal pin to your chest. Sometimes, it's a respectful nod from someone who has seen the same darkness as you and understands the sacrifices made in silence. Commander O'Connell's email remains saved in my secure account. I don't need to read it again. I have already made my choice. Some service transcends a government paycheck, and some missions are defined not by orders, but by conviction. My mission is here, in the clatter of plates and the murmur of conversation. It's in ensuring that the men and women who defend our country have a safe harbor to return to, even if it's just for a cup of coffee. I no longer carry a weapon or a badge, but I still carry the most important thing of all, the unwavering instinct to stand between innocence and harm. I'm still an agent. I just serve coffee now, too. This story is for all the silent guardians. If you believe true strength isn't about the uniform you wear, but the code you live by, comment Pale Horse to show your respect. And if you want to see more stories about the heroes living right beside us, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.